Hey YouTube, welcome back. I'm here with my 2025 Honda Dax 125, and I've got another installation today, and that is the Takegawa tachometer for this bike. It's actually very similar to the one that I put on my 2019 Honda Monkey. I was actually watching that video from 4 years ago because the tachometer that comes on this bike is actually the exact same as the one that came on the Monkey. The Takegawa product though, and I'll do a very quick unboxing before I throw it onto the bike, actually has a different part number. This is 05-05-0110. I'm not sure if it's just a mounting bracket that's different or if there's actually functionally something different between this and the one on the Monkey, but they are different part numbers. So if you're looking for this, and I'll link in the description below, I bought this from WeBike like I do a lot of parts from Takegawa and other Japanese companies. But the installation should be pretty simple, and I'm actually hoping that the settings are the same, because if so, I'm going to be lazy and just cut in that settings adjustment part of the video that I did, again, 4 years ago. Anyway, the tachometer that comes on this bike has a lot left to be desired. It's got the cute blinky eyes, but aside from that, shows almost no information. I'm pretty sure this doesn't even have a clock. Definitely doesn't have a tachometer, and the tachometer is important for me, especially as I start doing some performance modifications. You need to know what RPM you are to be able to figure out where you're on the band. It also lets you adjust the miles per hour that's displayed on the gauge, and that'll be important as I change gearing. There's just a lot of features, and again, we'll get into that once we get it on the bike. From an installation perspective, I think we just need to lower the headlight bucket to get access to the bolts, and then this main plug should be a straight swap. And then there is one plug that we need to run to the ignition coil to pick up the RPM signal. But again, that should be pretty simple. So let's get this quickly unboxed and then bolt it onto the bike. All right, so very quick unboxing. It comes with some cables. And I think the brown lead here is the one that we run to the coil, which I wish they'd make it black. The brown's not going to look good. I'll install it like this for now, but I'll probably end up swapping that with a black wire. Looks like a bracket. And then here is the main gauge. It looks very similar to the one that I put on the Monkey. I'm actually guessing it is the same part, just with different mounting points, but I'm not sure. The standoffs here may be a little bit different. And then it comes with a whole bunch of manuals. Again, I've done this before, and I'm using my own video as documentation to get this set up, but should be pretty straightforward. So I don't believe I need to, but just to be safe, I'm going to remove the headlight bucket here just so that I don't scratch anything. It's just 2 Phillips screws, and actually a viewer reminded me that technically these are you're supposed to use a JIS driver and not a Phillips driver, although for these screws and most of them on the bike, a regular Phillips works. Got it. Jesus. A regular Phillips works fine. So, although when I do have like a particularly tough Phillips style screw that is on a Japanese bike, I do pull out a GIS driver just so that it can actually get in those grooves more perfectly and prevent it from stripping. Okay, and then I think this is an M5 Allen on the side. There's also a 10mm bolt inside the headlight bucket here that we need to remove. Okay, then the cap pops off. And then you can see here, this is the main plug that we need to remove. That'll plug into the new harness. And then there are 2 more Phillips or GIS screws there. I think those are the 2 that we'll pull off. And then this should be coming off the bracket. Also, before you actually take this off for the last time, I would take a look at how many miles you have on your odometer, because you can input that number into the new Takegawa meter. But anyway, just remember to write that down before you take this off for good. Okay, old meter off. So this does have a very different bracket. Once you pull the stock meter off, there's these rubber grommets in the stock bracket that you remove. Keep them for some other project. The kit comes with these 2 washer collets. You pop them down in this hole. This bracket then goes on top here, and there are 2 M6 Allen bolts that thread through. And then the kit comes with good looking acorn nuts and washers for the other side. So a quick look at how this bracket is at this point. I like how it also adds some overall rigidity to the bracket by having that double layer of steel here. And then this bracket will mount, there's two threaded nuts on this first part of the bracket. This has these holes that will mount here, and the actual meter will pop on right there. The kit comes with these little steel collets that slot inside the rubber grommet there. There are washers that go first, then the bracket, more washers, and then these little M8 nuts. I'm actually going to use a dab of Loctite on these. And then finally, this housing slides over. There's a little slot here for the cable to kind of be lined up with. And then there's a slot for one last screw to hold this all together. And it requires a 3mm Allen key. So then there are two final bolts to line up here, and then the installation portion of this is complete. All right, so that looks super cool. There's glare because there's a light right on top of me, but it's perfectly centered. I know I've got a lot going on here. Let me turn this on. This is the Beeline Moto 2 GPS display. I'm testing it out, but it's really cool. I know this is stupid, but I love how in standby that little motorcycle goes back and forth as you sway. Anyway, I'll have a full video review on this here soon, but I'm really liking this whole gauge setup that I've got going here. So let's get the electronics together. You can see in here that this plug, the big one, just mates up to this. And then this plug is what we need, the brown one is what we need to run to the coil, which is down here. So we're going to tap into this wire right here, just underneath the coil. And then these two accessories, one we're going to use, I believe, comes with a button so that we can change settings. And then the other is for a temperature sensor, which I don't have, but it's a probe that can run to a special oil plug to monitor oil temps that I will install eventually. So let's just get this plugged together. Also, make sure that when you install this, that this housing is face down, because if it's faced up, it'll collect water. I know that from previous mistakes. I'm actually going to cut away a little bit of this stock rubber housing here because I don't want this to be able to collect water, and otherwise it also just makes it harder to connect here. Oh, so it comes with the probe and the extension cord. So all I need is that special oil cooler, that special oil plug that slips, that this can slip into. So I'm not installing this right now, but I will eventually. And then here's the button to control functions and the extension cord to piggyback off of that coil signal. All right, so with everything buttoned up, I think the bike looks great. Here's the profile from the rider's view. Love the brushed aluminum on the outside, way more than the plastic chrome color. I'm trying to move away from the plastic or the chrome altogether, and instead with the mostly black with some of the raw aluminum. While I had the headlight bucket off, I did install these much smaller turn signals. I 3D printed the mount here. It's funny, this little rubber grommet that I'm using was actually one of the two rubber grommets that came off of the stock mount that I knew I'd find some project for, and actually I found one almost immediately, but that looks clean. I also was able to fit perfectly this little dress-up washer in there to kind of finish that off. So anyway, super clean looking installation, and again, love the functionality that this has. Let me fire up the engine. I mounted my button, see if you can see it, right in here, which I can just reach to while I'm riding, but that otherwise doesn't take up or take away from any of the cleanliness of the rest of the setup here. But you can see as I cycle through trip A, trip B, the time, The engine temperature, I don't have that sensor installed yet. Oh, and of the two accessory wires that come out of the main harness, the black and orange one is the one that goes to the button. The other one is the one that goes to the sensor. Anyway, all of that, and so that you can hear me, this is again where we tap into the ignition coil. So this line, you can see I actually braided it. I was complaining about it being brown, so I put this black braided sheathing over it, runs up and into the harness up here. But again, super clean installation, and the great part is, from a settings perspective, this is all the exact same as the one on the Monkey, which I did a video to. So I'm going to go ahead and cut to that so that you can get detailed on how to actually set this up, and then we'll call this video good. So while I do miss the cute blinky eyes winking at me when the bike starts up, this is a much more functional and practical instrument cluster. So it's got the sweeping tack. The main thing that you're looking at all times is where you are in the RPM band. Down here in the corner, it has your miles per hour. The speedometer, you can switch between miles per hour and kilometers per hour. The temperature can be switched between Fahrenheit and Celsius, and the clock, and it's amazing to finally have a clock on this bike, can be switched between 12 hours and 24-hour clocks. Along the left side here are all of the different indicators. So your neutral light indicator, high beam indicator, fuel warning light, ABS light, and since I don't have ABS, I can turn that function off altogether, and check engine light down here at the bottom. So then here within the LCD screen, you've got your current speed, and then you can cycle through this next thing where it shows first your odometer. Down here it shows your gear selection. This comes with a built-in gear selector, and there's a learning process where you set it up, it tells you to go, and then it tells you to stay in each gear for a certain amount of time. And at the end, it's calibrated to understand at different speeds what that RPM is and how that translates to a particular gear. So it works really well. When you stop, it doesn't actually know which gear you're in. But otherwise, when you're traveling and you're in any particular gear, it knows if you're in gears 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then it always knows you're in neutral because there's a neutral indicator light coming off of the engine. And then down here at the bottom right, it has your fuel gauge level. So there's a little button, and it's slightly off camera. I showed it during the install. I have just under my handlebar that you can press once to cycle through the features. This is just the trip A feature, trip B. This shows, again, amazingly, the time. So this has a temperature sensor, which is really cool. By default, it's just a stick temperature sensor that currently is only showing me the ambient air temperature, but there's a kit that Takegawa sells to connect it to the drain plug to get oil temperature. And I've actually since ordered that so that I can monitor oil temps off of this screen and not having to use a secondary screen. The even cooler feature of this, and I'll show as I go through the option selections, but you can select this bright light up here to both be a maximum speed indicator, which doesn't make any sense. I just set mine to 100. It can also be a shift light. I have my RPM shift light set to 200 RPM, I believe. And also maximum engine temperature sensor, which is the most important thing to me as I'm monitoring this big bore kit, and I have certain temperatures that I don't want to go over. So I'm typically constantly looking at the AFR to make sure that I'm not running too lean, but I'm doing that to make sure that I'm not running too hot. And by having this maximum engine temperature sensor, once I get that additional part from Takegawa to actually be looking at the temp of the oil, it'll be great because I won't have to pay quite as much attention. If I see the indicator light pop on, I'll know I need to look through what the actual temp is and then potentially turn off the bike or take some other action. But out of the box, it just shows ambient temperature. So cycling through, battery voltage. This shows the maximum that I've hit in different things. So it shows that my max speed has been 50 miles an hour. The max temperature that it's currently showing at 192 degrees, that was actually because I was trying to see if I couldn't integrate my COSO sensor with this one. That's why it spiked up to that. I'm wondering actually if I can reset that. I assume if I just hold the button down, it resets them. Awesome. I wanted to show some of the adjustments you can make. So if you hold down the button off of the odometer, it goes into this adjust mode. You can change the clock time and also whether it's 12-hour or 24-hour clock. This is where you can change between Fahrenheit and Celsius and miles per hour and kilometers per hour. This is where you can change the illumination. So I'll select this. And it starts off as white, but I can go red, and actually red looks pretty cool with the bike. Yellow, also yellowish, green, blue, indigo, purple, and back to white. And so after that, you can also select the intensity, one being the dimmest 3, 4, and 5 being the brightest. So I'll leave it at the top for now. So this tire function is great. I had an aftermarket Speedo healer from 12 O'Clock Labs that I was using. Well, this thing has it integrated, and you can change the percentage of the tire size to accommodate for different speeds. So using the GPS on my phone, I just made adjustments until I got it to, in this case it was 106%, matched up well with my 16-tooth front sprocket and stock tires to give me an accurate reading on the speedometer as it matched against the GPS. This is the gear selection that I was speaking about earlier. This is the warning light. I'll go through this. So for speed, actually for some reason it's set at 89 miles an hour because I'm not really looking to be warned about any particular speed. RPM, I guess I currently have it to 9100. Here, I'll change that to 9200 for demonstration purposes. And then engine temp. Currently it's set to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is fine because it's not connected to the engine. So I think once I actually have the engine temp sensor on, I'll set it to about 220 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is the warning for the battery voltage setting. I have it set, and I think it was by default set to 11.5 volts, that it'll let me know if the voltage drops below that. I have the ABS setting set to off because I don't have ABS. And since this is replacing a speedometer that you likely already had miles on the bike, you can actually set how many miles you want this to start off with. So thanks everybody for watching. Please stay tuned for more videos.